Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to do another deck profile for a very good Dragon Empire deck who recently got some new cards and a promo that really made him shine. Merry Christmas to all of you, for those who are celebrating. Hope you have a wonderful holiday season. Without further ado, let's get right into it. I'm gonna start off with the right line as we usually do with these type of deck profiles. Starting off, we run a full lineup of Shojodojis in the right line, which makes me very happy to say, because a lot of our cards need the Shojodoji Vanguard name. And as such, this really enables us to make some earlier plays than we kind of should. A lot of power in this deck lies in its grade 2 game and the ability to use certain cards very early to push your opponent and play in a very aggro way. So the grade 0 is just your usual starter. The grade 1 instantly gives you value when you ride it. It lets you check top 5, then choose up to 2 stealth units, which the name stealth is going to come up quite a bit during this video. So choose up to 2 of them. One of them goes into the soul, and the other gets bound into our bind zone. Why that's so good? Well, first of all, we need a soul for all of our effects, and we also use a bind zone for multiple things. There's a card that allows us to guard from the bind zone, and our main Vanguard lets us superior call things from the bind zone to extend our multi-attacks. Grade 2 Shojodoji is even better. It even sees play in Premium as one of the best right targets you can possibly have. It lets you check top 5, very similar to the grade 1. The difference is where the grade 1 puts it to the bind zone, the grade 2 lets you call it to rearguard circle. So one goes to soul, the other gets called to rearguard circle. Important detail here is if you only have one target, it has to forcibly go into the soul. As such, we're pretty much running the entire deck full of stealth units to really try to get as much value as possible from our right line. Then, last but not least, grade 3 Shojodoji, the drunk man himself. He is very strong in a lot of different ways. First of all, his main skill lets you bind 2 cards from your soul, then choose 2 circles, not rear guards, so that means it can dodge resists of decks like Bastion, and then bind them both. However, the only downside is at the end of turn, they go back to your opponent's hand. It's something that can be forgotten, and if your opponent notices it too late or you don't remind them, it can get pretty bad in terms of legal stuff. So be sure to remember to remind your opponent to take those cards back, or else you might get in trouble in a big tournament. The second skill lets you on attack counterblast 1. Put 2 of your rearguards into soul, so that's a good way to give us more soul and set it up for the later game of having to bind more things on our soul, right? Then we can call a card from our bind zone, which there are multiple really good targets that we want to call. And if our opponent is grade 3 or greater, it gets plus 10k. So that's an easy 4th attack. There's some other cards that allow us to do 5 attacks, which we'll get into a little bit later. But that's the basic setup. You swing your rearguard, put them into soul, call another card from the bind zone, get a bunch of power, and then a lot of skills go on standby depending on what you have in your field. Alright, let's get into the triggers of the deck, which is a mandatory part but mostly pretty easy. We're playing Dragveda, the Dragon Empire Overtrigger. Then we're playing 1 copy of the Timara Hime, which says that if your opponent's a higher grade than you, you get plus 10k shield. She also, because of that, only a 10k base shield. Technically worse than a normal heal, but since we are moving into a Luard and Shiranui meta, this will actually become a lot more useful. The good thing is also it's a stealth unit. It's a stealth fiend. So again, if we check top 5, we can do things with it. There's other cards that specifically lets us search for stealth units. So try and have as many stealth units, even if they're triggers. Yes, we don't like putting those triggers to soul, but sometimes it gives us a lot more value than just putting something else to soul and then not getting something to our field with the grade 2 Shojodoji. We're running 3 of the normal stealth heals. Again, same reason, picked the stealth heal because of the stealth name, and we obviously want to run 4 heal triggers. Then, unfortunately, we don't have 8 stealth crits, So we're running the 4 that we have, and then 4 of whatever your favorite choice is. I don't remember if the Shiranui deck has new stealth crits, but if it does, you definitely want to play those over this one. Then last but not least, we have 4 Parama. She's the effect front for Dragon Empire. We do usually have a full front row. I try to, as best as possible, work towards that, and since we do call new units, it's quite useful to run fronts over draw triggers. We are trying to play a very aggro-based game, even though this deck can tank really well because of all the extra additional shield value we get off of some of our cards. We do try to push our opponent as hard as possible, as quickly as possible, and front triggers just help with that. Moving on over to the actual units in the deck. We'll start with the grade 1s. In my opinion, every card in this deck serves a different purpose and a different function. As such, we will start with Kagechika. Very good card, we run him at 4 copies. He's one of the set 12 supports that really made Shojodoji a lot more consistent, a lot more viable, and really it was like the first step to him becoming a competitively viable deck choice. So what does he say? On place, you can choose a stealth unit from your drop and put it into your soul. That enables us to really filter through our soul and get the units in our soul that we really want, and we really want to get into our bind zone, and it's such a great consistency tool to the point where I don't feel like I need Forktail in this deck, while some others do. There's very much an argument once we go to 50 cards to play Forktail, just because she'll increase our consistency on getting the cards in our soul that we really want. But for now, I choose not to run her, because this guy just does it better in a way. If you see early one of your pieces you want in your bind zone, you just discard it for right deck and then put it into soul with this guy. It's honestly really functional, and it gives you a lot of advantage by getting the cards in your soul that you really want. The second skill of him says when something is called from your bind zone, you can put him into the soul to draw a card. So this is where I said earlier, a lot of things come on standby when you perform Shojodoji's on attack skill. He's one of them. And this thing fuels your soul incredibly well, and lets you pay for some of the Soul Blast costs that are in the deck to draw you a lot of cards. You could easily go +3. I've gone +3 quite often with combination of this card and Unprecedented, which is your primary call target from your bind zone. Next up, we run Raidon Kunai. Incredible card. He's the promo that we just got that really pushed this deck over the edge, made it really, really viable. So when something's called from the bind zone, you can bind him, give that unit +5k, and then countercharge if you haven't countercharged yet this turn. That's so good, because before this, Shojodoji had to really be conservative with its counterblast, and now you can literally just go as crazy as you want, as aggro as possible, because this guy just says, hey, don't worry, I got your back, I'll make sure that you have this counterblast so you can pay for Shojodoji skill every turn. Not only that, when he binds himself, if he's in the bind zone and your Vanguard with Shojodoji in his name is attacked, you can call him to Guardian Circle and he gets +5k shield. That's really, really good. That's extra shield value. It's oftentimes people forget it's there if they don't know the deck well enough, and you can surprise them by thinking, oh yeah, you can guard that, but actually I can. So this is really, really good promo that we just got. I would definitely recommend to run 4. The tech slot of this deck, which is Fushimachi Madoka. He's very simple. He just looks at your opponent's cards in grave, and if there's enough of them, he gets extra power and extra shield value. So there's 4 cards in your opponent's graves, he gets +2k power and 5k shield. If there's 8, he gets an extra 5k shield. So this is another reason why we can really be very tanky, because it's just another grade 1 with 15k shield, while still being a 10k booster, which is important in this deck because it makes magic numbers with a lot of our swings. Then we're running some very odd choices in our PG lineup. The ones that aren't weird is the Effect PG and the Elementar Sanctitude, pretty standard for any deck. However, currently we are running the Trial Deck PGs, very simply because they're a stealth name. And we have a stealth searcher, or top 5 checker for stealth units, so being able to check top 5 and add a PG when you really need it, really strong. Do be forewarned, again, in the Shira Nui trial deck, there is a stealth effect PG, so this will literally make this choice irrelevant, and you'll want to run that specific PG every single time, because it will just give you the best value for your money. Alright, sorry, I had to put the light on because it was getting a little bit too dark. Next up, we'll go over the grade 2s in the deck. First off, we have Isasao, one of the other set 12 support cards, which really pushed the deck into just like Ichachiki did, the grade 1 that we talked about earlier. They're kind of like a pair in my eyes. So what does he do? When he is put into the soul by your Vanguard's ability with the Shojodoji name, you can get your Vanguard plus 5k and then bot-tech a unit in your opponent's bind zone. So those pesky things that you don't want your opponent to get back into their hand, this is your guy for it. This is literally the best card in the deck for this reason, honestly. You get your Vanguard's actual swinging power on first grade 3 turn, and bot-tech's units so they can't get them back and they're just gone. It's one of the best forms of removal, bot-teching units, especially against decks like Zorga, for example. So I would definitely recommend this card. Easily at 4. There's no reason not to run him at 4, because he's literally the best. Because his second skill is even better than his first skill. He lets you on place counterblast 1 to check top 5 for a stealth unit and add it to your hand. This is the reason why we run those stealth PGs, why we run those stealth triggers. If we need shield value, we can go for those. Alternatively, even our Vanguard's a stealth unit, so we can search Persona Ride. It's literally just amazing consistency plus for the deck, and it's just a hard plus to your hand, which this deck really desperately needed. Next up, we'll go over the new card from set 13. Gun Yoku. What a fun name. Definitely didn't pronounce that right. So with him, if he's called by a card ability, and your opponent has 2 or less on their field, he gets plus 10. What? I slept on this card at first until I tried it out, and I saw it at grade 2, and I swung for 28k with a booster against my opponent's 8k Vanguard. And I was like, whoa, this card is a lot better than I thought it was, just because of the pure pressure that it gives you, and the pure swinging power early game, and it just gives you so much more aggro. Because ideally you'll want to place, you'll have one of this off your right line, and then the Isasao on your other column, and then you just swing a bunch of times. If you check a front, that's just the best value you could hope for, and your opponent will pretty much not be able to guard any of the swings. Top of that, if his attack hits, you can retire him to draw a card. So not only does he just become really big early game, he also gives you extra draws to get into your pieces and potentially find a card that you need to make your grade 3 turn just that much better. Last but not least, it's another promo for the deck, Shojodoji. He's your multi-attack extender card. So what does he say? When he's put into the soul from deck or rearguard circle, you can bind him to soul charge 1. So he can bind himself when you put him with Shojodoji skill, or when you put him from Shojodoji skill, any of them, into your soul, which already sets him up into the bind zone. Because very importantly, when he's in the bind zone and 2 or more of the rearguards were put into the soul at the same time, counterblast 1 and call this unit to an open rearguard circle. So when you do your Shojodoji skill, put him into soul, and he's already in your bind zone. So he can't be one of the rearguards that go into soul, because then he'll miss timing. Which is a very weird thing to say in Vanguard, but yes, he'll miss timing to be called out. But if you're already there, you can counterblast 1 to call another body. So that's your way to enable 5 attacks. I run only 3, however, because I feel like at times the deck does not need the extra 5th attack. I have won most of my games without ever really needing this card, but in some situation where the game starts to drag on really long, and you have a bunch of leftover CB, because again you have no counter charge, This card can really up the tempo of the deck, and just if you're trying to go for a lethal push, he's there for you to give you another swing at hopefully winning the game. Alright, last but not least, we'll go with the Great Trees. So 3 Persona Ride copies. I feel like this is the one thing that I don't need to talk about. Every deck wants to run Persona Ride copies if they are able to. Then the star boss monster, however you want to say it, of this deck is the President. He is your main beat stick. He is your main target to call from the bind zone with Shojodoji skill. He is your guy that you want to find on grade 2 to call to your rearguard circle. He's literally everything you could ever want from a card. Now why is that? When he's placed on rearguard circle by an effect, you can Soul Blast 1 to draw a card. So that's like every turn you're plussing, pretty much, because you can keep recycling him with the Kageshika. I've literally sometimes just overcalled my Unprecedented with Kageshika, just to put it into drop so Kageshika can put it back into Soul, so you can then be bound again. Just and then with Vanguard skill, you know, you bind him again into the bind zone, so he can be called out again. It's a little resource loop, because then Kageshika goes back into the Soul to draw your card. Now you have an extra card in your Soul, then Soul Blast off on President. You just keep going. This deck does not run out of resources. If anything, it'll run out of deck before you run out of resources. Above that, he gets plus 10 if 2 cards were put into Soul this turn. So he's already 23k. 33 if you call from Vanguard. 34 during a Persona Ride turn. That's a really, really good value for what you want out of it. And it's the best beat stick the deck can ask for. Alright, next up we'll go over some basic turn 2, turn 3 gameplay of like what you should expect out of this deck, and kind of the main flow and reasoning behind some of the choices that you need to make. Okay, so we're back. Shuffle the deck up, put everything ready for a little display of skill. I'm going to start by checking out our starter hand. We'll want to put back these 3 cards and keep those 2. That's a literally perfect hand. Gonna give him a quick shuffle. Alright, so we have a really strong opening hand. We got all the pieces that we could ask for. We have discard fodder. Yeah, this is great. So let's assume that we go first in this case. Draw your card and then check your hand. Unprecedented is your best discard fodder, arguably tied with the Shojodoji. Why? Because again, Kageshika exists. You opened it, so in this case it's definitely worth it to at least pitch one of these 2. You'll probably be pitching both of them, as these are like ideal, in my opinion, to discard off of the right deck. So let's start with Shojodoji, because at least Unprecedented is still a good beat stick on your first grade 3 ride. Then we ride up to grade 1 Shojodoji. We use its skill to check top 5. And we're already winning. Look, we found 2 stealth units. That's literally perfect. Not only do we filter our deck, we're also setting up for the later game. In this case, I was definitely put in the grade 2 and bind Unprecedented. You'll pass your turn to your opponent. They'll do their turn, take your damage. Let's assume that they don't rush us this time. We're the rush deck, right? They won't rush us. Alright, next up we draw for turn. In this case we'll be pitching the Unprecedented because we want both in our drop zone. We will ride up to grade 2 Shojodoji. As I've said before, this card is literally crazy. And apparently our luck is also crazy. So there's multiple lines that we can do here. Ideally I feel like these 2 are the best targets here. This one will give you more cards in hand, this one will give you more pressure, so it's arguably which one in this case is better. For the sake of showing the more aggro-based version, I'll be calling this one Putting Unpresident into Soul. Then we'll be calling our boy Isasao, counterblasting 1. Checking top 5 again. This is not looking good, but we found a target. He can add himself, which just makes it like even better. Because I can use it again next turn if you have a CB for it. Your opponent will probably give you the damage. So we can add this card to our hand, and then we simply call this down, because this card, again, as I said before, he gets +10 when called and your opponent has 2 arrest rear guards. Since they're on grade 1, there's literally almost no chance your opponent called down 2 rear guards, unless it's like a plant token spam deck, in which case we would probably have swapped around which card we would have called. But we're just assuming in this case that they don't have a board present. So this on-play skill we can put, in this case we already have quite a lot of the Unpresident set up. So we'll go for the multi-attacker into Soul. We'll start, because we're playing fronts, we'll start with Vanguard Swing. Check. It's almost like I'm making up these situations and setting up a deck, but I'm really not. So this is literally perfect for us. We'll get our +10 to the front row. Our opponent is literally crying right now if this happened in an actual game, because now he would swing for 20, 10 without the trigger, 38, 28 without the trigger. Like, good luck guarding a 38k swing at grade 1. You'll be pushing away a PG or like 3 cards out of your hand. They're just going to assume that he takes it, so he can retire it to draw another card. Our opponent, we pass then to our opponent. Let's say they do us 2 damage, so we have some CB to work with. We'll go over to our next turn, literally the best top deck we could ask for. In this case, probably want to keep this, because we'll go for 3 attacks. Kind of debatable here. Yeah, we have enough of this guy, and we have another copy in our soul, so I feel fine discarding him. In we go to Shojodoji. Calling down Isasao. Counterblast 1. Checked up 5 again, so again we're plussing, we're keeping up that aggro. We found our Vanguard. Just gonna check the 5th card, yeah. So we found a persona right target for next turn to keep pushing them. This video is making itself right now. The deck is literally doing what it should in the most perfect way possible that I could ask for. We'll call right on Kunai, and I can now show you literally full combo for the deck. So we'll use our Vanguard skill. We'll be looking through it. Definitely want to bind our extender, and let's say we'll bind the grade 1 just to show off how that works, because there's a part about the right line that I didn't mention earlier. You can call them from bind zone for Soul Blast 1, so we're just gonna not only are we getting a bunch of value off of all our effects, also our right line just perfectly works in our favor and lets us build an easy board. If we're like running out of resources late game, we can literally just call out our grade 2 Shojodoji and use it to put into the soul with the Vanguard's effect. The deck makes itself, it really does. Alright, you would swing both of your rearguard columns first, both swing for 18. So we're assuming we went first, so 18 on 10, a 10k shield, which pretty much not a lot of decks have. There's far and in between, outside of draw triggers. So essentially asking for 15k shield most of the time. They probably take the first one, hope for defensive, and then guard the second one. Then we attack with our Vanguard skill. Counterblast 1. Put 2 of our front row rearguards. Well, it doesn't have to be front row, but in this case we want to put our front row rearguards in. I like putting them like this, because because then I remember that they actually have skills and effects that are still on standby. In this case, we're calling down our President, and he gets +10 from his own effect. Next up, we can use the 2 grade 2's effect to give our Vanguard +10 and bot tech 2 units in our opponent's bind zone. Because remember, our Vanguard does bind our opponent's field, so in this case it's just hard removal or whatever's on their board. Like if it's literally anything, even if it's the Virina now, because it has resist, it can still be bound because they're targeting the circle. That's so good. Then we can bind discard the counter charge and give another +5k. This guy can go into the soul for a draw, and then with his skill you can soul blast him back out for another draw, so it's literally just going +2 for doing what we do. Then I'm just going to show this just to show the full most optimal turn you can do. You can counterblast 1 because 2 cards are put into our soul, call him to Rigor Circle. So now we're doing a 5 attack first grade 3 turn, where usually this isn't worth it because he won't really hit without Persona Ride, because he's only at 10k right now. We're just gonna call him there just to showcase like the full flow of the deck. We do our Twin Drive, heal front, we'll probably put heal on our right rear guard, and then front is just a blanket effect. And we're really getting all of Trigger's luck in this. But it's kind of part of the deck because you're filtering so much. That's perfect. Then you would swing here for 10, but I guess if you check 2 triggers, it's 30. That's a good reason to call this guy, because you're hoping to see a trigger and then make him big enough to where he's actually relevant. And then this guy, he'll swing on his own already for 28. And since we checked the front, he's going to swing for 38. All in all, a very strong grade 3 turn. And at the end of it, you're ending on a 2, 4, 6, 8, and 9 card hand. It's quite hefty. Pretty much on a 10 card hand because we have him in soul. In bind, excuse me. Pretty much ending on a 10 card hand because we have him in bind zone. So yeah, this is really good. I really do enjoy the flow of this deck a lot. Alright, this was the Shojodoji deck profile. One of the most enjoyable decks for me to play in standard right now. It had a lot of options to plus and just push your opponent really hard. I've had games where my opponent didn't even reach grade 3 turn just because I pushed him so hard early game. Really tried to capitalize on that ability, because once you hit grade 3, you'll go plus a lot with each Kageshika, and you'll just refill your hand on like multiple ways. Get a bunch of extra shield in your bind zone. I put out the big players of the deck here for this final outro. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, Merry Christmas. Have a good holiday season. I really do hope you all enjoyed the video. Let us know what you think down below. Comment, like, subscribe, all those things. And we'll be back next week with another amazing deck profile, whatever that may be. See you guys later. Have a good one. Bye bye.